have a great impact on the next generation as well. Because as my mom likes to remind me, they're going to pick your home. Good day, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Monday Morning Moments with Mark. I hope this finds you well. So, as you saw in the open, this week we're going to talk about a little bit of transcendence from one generation to the next and who's getting it right. So, we'll get to all that here in a few minutes, but first we always have to start out with the funniest thing. And the funniest thing this week happened to me, and it's probably why I'm doing a video this week on some of the effects of which what happens when you start to get a little bit older. But anyways, we're getting ready to set up all the fall decorations here in the house. And first of all, let me say it's great to have Miss V back in charge of that. Thank you for that. I held it down last year while she was out working, being a working woman and everything, and I was working from home, but man, it's nice to have her back in charge of those sorts of things. And here's the reason why. So I'm looking around for like what tablecloth's supposed to go on first to usher in fall and all of that. And I was like, man, I thought I got something last year. And she's like, I don't know. And I said, oh, well, oh, that's right. So we have these placemats that normally are on all year round, and there are beech wicker. And I said, oh, that's right. Beech wicker turns into hayseed in September, and we just keep using those. I completely forgot that I did, in fact, buy these nice chargers that are supposed to be our like fall table chargers. So anyways, forgot all about that. Anyways, they're out there now. And like I said, that's why I'm no longer in charge of interior decorations. And it is nice to have her back. So moving on to talk about there's some sort of correlation between generations that came to me. And that was kind of like the moment and reflection that I had. And I'm going to get into all the details of that. But let me tell you where it all started from. So Miss V and I were out riding around, and Dave Matthews Band song comes on, and she's just singing away. And I'm sitting over there thinking to myself, I'm like, man, that song's older than I think. And I said, oh yeah, so am I now. Anyways, and I got to thinking about how like music that was popular when our generation was having their coming of age is now resurging again, and it's think about music being dubbed over all these TikTok videos, and I see a lot of the videos where they have like the same beat from new music, but it was actually from a previous thing, and then actually it was also from your parents' generation, and it's not just the beat, but sometimes the lyrics as well and all of that. So that got me to thinking about like how there's this generational pass down of music and trends and all those sorts of things. And I started realizing that from Gen Z, who is having their coming of age right now, the millennials, and to a certain degree, Gen X are the parents of those kids. But really, it's millennials and being the parents of Gen Z, and then boomers being the parents of millennials, and then largely the Depression era / World War II being the parents of boomers. And it's really based on when the different generations had their coming of age. So, in that, each one of those great major generations over the last 100-ish years that we're talking about now, each one had their own conquest that they sort of had to have societal conquest, which obviously with the Depression era and World War II, those were their two things. The boomers in and of themselves, social reforms and just living in the 60s in general as a whole thing, coming out of that alive and sane or sane-ish was a conquest. And then as millennials, ushering in the internet and the information age that got us to where we are now. And I would imagine that Gen Z's conquest is going to probably be making social media effective for society. And a lot of things are starting to trend that way, regardless of what people say. Social media gets a bad rap, but these kids are figuring out how to use it in a proper and productive way. Ask millionaire YouTube kids that are 13 years old. So anyways, here I am on my own video, not a millionaire. So what I drew the correlation between them is that something about that becomes a hallmark of the generation, and that becomes the lessons learned passed on. And I will tell you one thing about these Gen Z kids: they're doing a lot of things right, so we must have done things right too. So anyways, but from that, the lessons learned have to come from somewhere. So that got me to thinking about, well, if Gen Z is learning their lessons learned and how they're creating, affecting change in the world today, that where we got it from and we got our lessons from boomers, and kind of drawing that line back again. And then I started thinking, well, why isn't the same thing on a personal level? Because I always like to bring it back to, growth for ourselves. And I got to thinking about how we go through phases in our life and we bring those lessons with us. And we're sort of like in the next, each phase of life is kind of like the next generation within our own life, to think about it that way. And there's a correlation between the conquest that you have as an infant to what you have as a child, as a teenager, young adult, and then moving on through the human life cycle process and all the things that you take with you. It's very similar to the generational process. And I'm not going to get into talking about that on like a major world history, um, you know, perspective, but I'm sure there is one out there to draw those sorts of correlations as well. But the idea is from a personal growth perspective, which is what this platform's here for and what I like to talk about, is being able to take those lessons learned and continue to manifest them in a way that you're evolving as a person the same way that future generations are evolving based on the lessons learned from past generations. We need to do the same thing for ourselves. When we come into a new generation of ourselves as a person, we need to take the lessons learned from our past self and become better, be a better person, give more back to the world, and affect greater change in the world. And I think that today's society, that's happening more and more frequently, but we need to be able to do it on an individual level. So take some time this week to reflect back on the different phases of your life, the different generations of yourself, and see what kind of impact it's had on the subsequent one. And are you growing in the direction that you want to go to? Are you learning from the lessons learned in previous life, and becoming better and affecting a better change in the world? If not, apply some of those lessons learned. If you are, then continue doing that and find ways to affect that into not only yourself as you go into the next generation, but to have a great impact on the next generation as well. Because as my mom likes to remind me, they're going to pick your home. So, anyways, think about that and how you're having a great impact on the world, and have a great week.